Hello, beautiful, and welcome to Finding Fertility. I'm your host, Monica Cox from findingfertility.co, and I created this podcast to help get you to start thinking outside of the box and realize that your infertility might have nothing to do with your lady bits. Rooted in functional medicine and personal experience, Finding Fertility is all about looking at the whole body and finding the root cause of your infertility. Finding Fertility does not diagnose, prescribe, or treat any issues of infertility, but what we do is take a holistic approach and improve your diet and your lifestyle to get you steps closer to creating your dream family. Just by being here with me, listening to this podcast, you're already going down the right path to making your dreams come true. Let's do this together. Happy Friday, all. Welcome back to another episode of Finding Fertility. I'm super excited to have Michelle back on. You were like one of my very first guests when I started this podcast I think over 4 years ago.
That's nuts.
Yeah, time has just gone by, and it's really interesting to see who is actually still here and still, doing the fertility health coaching, because sometimes
True.
you get into business or into something that is really like close to your heart. And then like as you're moving through and you're evolving in life, you kind of go, actually, I would like to pivot this way. So yeah,
Mhm.
so welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I've actually thought about that. I'm like, there's some people that have been around for a while and they were like, like from years back. And then there's some people that haven't made it. I mean, it's just, or not made it, but like they just decided to do something else. So I'm thinking about it. It's like, wow, I have some friends that have been doing this forever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's cool. And everyone just pivots to, where their heart is being led and stuff. And really, since we started, it's completely changed. Like it's not the same as 4 or 5 years ago or a decade ago. Obviously, there's so much more new research. People are more into accepting what we're saying.
Yes.
We're not well, some people still think we're crazy, but like for the most part, I feel what we're trying to articulate doesn't sound as crazy as maybe when we were saying it, 10 years ago.
Well, there's a lot of studies out now that are pretty
Mhm.
much proving a lot of even Chinese medicine. And like, there's so many different things that are showing up now in research that we didn't have before. And that's very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even just today, my husband came in and he was like, the Wall Street Journal has published this article that they have the scientific proof that highly processed food messes with your brain. And I'm just like, that is crazy that 20, 30, 40 years later, they're finally just adding 1 + 1 = 2. Like, do we really need scientific studies, or can we just look around at
I
everyone's
know.
health?
It's true. It's like you could feel it too. You could see how your body feels when you're doing certain things. I mean, and then if you can't pronounce it, it probably is a little bit,
Yeah, right.
processed a lot,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. But other than us wanting to see each other, you've reached out because you have written a book and it's out there available. What's the name of your book?
So it's the Way of Fertility, and the Way of Fertility is like the main one. Obviously, there's a subtitle, but the Way of Fertility, and it's really based on a lot of the ancient wisdom that Chinese medicine is based upon and came from, which is Taoism, but also some of the things that were taught in Ayurvedic medicine, and basically all of these amazing like wise pearls that have been passed along. And I feel like there's definitely a longing now to go back to our roots. And if you look back at a lot of the things that were taught, it's all about going back to basics and a formula that promotes health, which is really the formula that all of nature is based on, the
Hmm.
yin and the yang, the balance, the homeostasis. And ultimately it's really kind of coming back to the fact that we are designed incredibly intelligently, and that intelligence has designed us to procreate. And if there's something getting in the way, what is it? And
Mm-hmm.
how do you get back into that state of balance?
Yeah. Yeah. It's common sense, right?
Yeah.
But we complicate things so much. And I know in our first meeting that we did together, we talked about how, acupuncture and this Western medicine is so incredibly valuable, but also we're dealing with Western issues, right? So we have
Hmm.
this Eastern medicine that was just, like you said, comes from nature, comes from the universe, the cosmos, the God, it's just so that's how it is. And then all of a sudden, all these crazy Western problems started to pop up. And for our society and our generation, it's like smack in our face. And so many people, because let's just say the last 40 years, we've gone so far to like, well, your body can't. Your body
Hmm.
can't because of your age, because of your diagnosis. You can't reverse anything. And we're stuck in this mindset. So, what do you bring in with that Eastern knowledge to help women understand that, yeah, there might be some, stepping stones we have to do. There might even need to be medical intervention. But look at what this Eastern knowledge can give you.
I mean, it really comes down to connecting with our own intelligence. We have it all. Like, we don't have to go and buy into all of this complication that is being thrown at us. Not to say don't listen to your doctor. Absolutely. You need to, like, you can't leave any stone unturned when it comes to your medical diagnosis and really looking into it and be responsible about it. But there's also a level of, and I give my own example, my own journey in this is, how for so many years I was conditioned to completely ignore my body. And I was also conditioned to give my power away. And I gave my power away for many years. And what that brought me to many different people, many different similar opinions, is going on and off the birth control pill. I was given the false hope or the illusion that the birth control pill was going to regulate my period.
Hmm.
It's an illusion. It's not real. It's
Yeah.
not even a real period. So let's be real, so let's go back to the truth. So that was me really uncovering the truth and trying to figure out. And as soon as I put that intention out there, that was when I kind of felt very decisive about it. That was when my mom heard about an acupuncturist. It was kind of like an opening of an intelligence that basically was waiting for me to say, you know what, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
let's fix this. Okay. So, and my fertility, God knows what would have happened if I didn't fix it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was probably not ovulating for
Hmm.
the whole time. I was having 3 month cycles. Even if I was ovulating, who the heck knows when that would be? I mean, with 3 month cycles, my circadian rhythm was off. So I had no idea what was going on with me, but I knew something was off.
Yeah.
And when I opened that up, and actually, interestingly enough, and this is in the book, I spoke to a Santeria medium in Cuba while I was away. And he told me two things. There's like some kind of blockage or something off with your abdomen, your pelvis. I was like, what? Like, what could be off? I had no idea that, at the time I had no medical background whatsoever. I was doing architecture. No idea. Like, I'm like, what? Do I have something there? Like, what does that mean? But I also didn't take it like too seriously where I was like, oh my God, like I have something bad.
Hmm.
He just said, look into it. I was like, okay. But I didn't think about it as something relating to my menstrual cycle. Like at the
Yeah.
time, I didn't put two and two together. And then he also said, you're going to have someone much older, an older man, very tall stature, and he's going to change your life. I was like, okay. So I came home, and that was when I was like 3 month backpacking, didn't get my period once, was off the birth control pill at that point, told my mom when I came back to New York, something's got to give. We got to figure this out. Like, this is not normal. Like, I should be getting my period normally. Like, this is not
Yeah.
normal. Like, I've never had it. And this is also a great example of like your past will not predict your future, because I could have said, I'm always gonna be like this. This is just the way my body is. I could have like totally taken what I was told professionally, like from the medical community, not just once, but many repeated times, that the only solution to this is a birth control pill. And this is just how my body is. It's off.
Hmm.
I could have, and thank God, I probably had undiagnosed PCOS which I think, looking back at some of the signs, but thank God nobody said, because they do say this sometimes, you're going to have a problem with fertility and all of this other stuff getting in my mind, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
So luckily that wasn't said. I didn't have access to that, because God knows, all of that stuff really puts in your mind these beliefs in your body. And that is like, it's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They call it nocebo. So basically, I eventually went to an acupuncturist in New York, in Queens, New York, and he worked out of his basement. His name was Dr. Lee, and he was tall in stature, like very like older. He's retired now. I should reach out and get him on the podcast. Like I've thought about that, but I just don't know like where he's at, like how he's feeling, and but side note, anyway. So he basically changed my life, and that's
Yeah.
what they said. He's going to change your life, and change my life, change my fertility, like brought me back my period monthly. I started to feel more aligned in my body. And that's when I feel like that intelligence, that chi is not just life. It's not just life force. It's not just energy. It's like, it's intelligence.
Yeah.
It's this intelligence that knows how to guide you. And it was like, all of a sudden, almost like two separated circuits got combined, and it was like, boom. I started reading books or finding things, like just synchronicity started happening in my life. And that was when I was like, okay, I don't think I'm meant to be an architect. And it was just like all these different things that I never really had the courage to look at
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And meditating too, connecting with that intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the core issue, is that as a society, we don't teach women to be in their empowerment. When we were growing up, your period wasn't really talked about. And, I see it all over social media, that it's so normal for women not to have their periods now. And there's this one girl that popped up, and she went super viral because she didn't have a period, and then she wanted to get pregnant. She's like, "Oh, I think it's an issue now." And
Right.
a lot of people are just like, "What?" And
Yeah.
she's not on the path to, from what I know, I don't follow her. What I saw in this brief amount of time of figuring out why I don't
Hmm.
have my periods. Obviously the doctor's answer was like, "We'll put you on Clomid, we'll get you ovulating and stuff." But you're not peeling back the layers, because if you've never had a period and you're like 27, what inflammation is going on in your body to dysregulate that? What
Right. What's
pathways,
going on?
what is going on?
Yeah.
And why don't you think that might have an effect on your egg quality, or your uterine lining? And obviously the uterine lining and all that, we can use medications to get it there, but there's nothing out there on the market right now to improve egg quality. There's no supplement, there's nothing. There's support, but the main driver of that egg quality is you and your health. And linking it back to that empowerment and getting into that flow of your innate self, I wouldn't say it's like essential to give birth, because obviously the crackhead on the side
Right.
of the
Yeah.
street,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you then move into a conversation of what kind of future are you and your children going to have if you are not at least aware of that. Because I think we both know, as mothers and as entrepreneurs, if you don't deal with it at, your fertility stage or early on, it will slap you in the face later on.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. Like it's not going to go away, because it's, if you're going to try to like bypass and just go for the goal and not really like look at what's happened. Ask like, what is my body like yearning for?
Mhm.
What does it want? Because it's trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And you can't just ignore it and say, just give me what you want. I understand. I know that it's difficult to say. It's easier said than done, but it's trying to get your attention for a reason, and it's not going to go away even after you get the goal.
Yeah, exactly. And as we said in the beginning, we've seen this industry change over the last 5 to 10 years. And I do think that this huge shift away from victim mentality, because I feel like when I first started, and I don't know if you felt it too, it was definitely this kind of like wise me, here's a trigger warning before you like talk to anything about pregnancy or anything like that. And now women are just like, okay, I'm done with that bullshit.
Mhm.
Like I I want to step into empowerment. I don't want to just get pregnant anymore. And
Yeah.
obviously there's a spectrum, right?
Right.
Everyone,
There's a
and maybe
spectrum for
because
sure.
that's where I am in my head and that's how I'm speaking now. I definitely speak a very different way than when I first started this podcast. And it is that empowerment of like, no, there's real hard facts that you guys got to think of beyond the two pink lines. It's
Mhm.
genetics, how you
Mhm.
genetically setting up your health and your child's health, right? How you going to make it through this pregnancy? How you going to give birth? How you going to hit that postpartum? Because if you're ignoring the things that are trying to tell you, hey, I'm in survival mode, they're just going to make it worse. Pregnancy, as
Oh yeah.
once you've been pregnant, you know how demanding that is on your body. And this is why, half of my clients are dealing with secondary infertility.
Oh yeah. I mean, in Chinese medicine, we look at it as pregnancy demands a lot of your qi and blood. And this is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why qi could look life force vitality, if somebody doesn't really know what that is. So, and blood is obviously, I mean, it's obvious, but like in Chinese medicine, it's really what transports a lot of the nutrients. And you need a healthy gut for that. So the spleen and stomach are really at the center of that.
Yeah.
Spleen and stomach, even though spleen, I know in Western medicine is more like an immune thing, but it's actually a digestive thing.
Mhm.
It's what takes out, extracts the nutrients from food into the body, into the blood, so that your body's able to take from it. Like so that amazing nutrient dense blood will feed the ovaries and the follicles and support that egg quality. And so gut health, inflammation, all of that gets in the way. But even more to the core is really the energetics, because you can check off every single list and it's still not going to work.
Yeah.
And because the mind, you cannot ignore it, like your spirit, really. I don't even want to say the mind. I want to go past the mind.
Mhm.
I want to talk about your state of being. And so that's really what I talk about. And I give like very specific ways to how to, because you had mentioned something really important, the victimhood. And then there's also the sort of what is it called, toxic positivity. So
Mhm.
these are the two extremes, right?
Yep.
So you have one where I'm just going to pretend like I'm fine and like only think positive, and how realistic is that? And then I'm just, I can't do anything, it's just, this is my diagnosis, this is how I am. So it's kind of like, let's take those two extremes and kind of like find a middle ground where you are not pretending like everything's okay, because it's not.
Mhm.
Allowing yourself, being just as compassionate as you would be your best friend, somebody
Yeah.
who you really, really care for and love, like listening to them, allowing them to express themselves, not judging what they're going to say. So instead of saying just relax, so that's the kind of like toxic positivity. Oh, it's going to be fine. You wouldn't do that to your best friend if your friend's coming and talking to you. But you would also guide your best friend. If you see that they're doing something or thinking a certain way, you might reframe, the situation to give them more power. So that's where the empowerment comes in. So we have like, we tend to have both extremes. And if you just come to the middle, I feel like that's the most ideal way. And that's what will actually empower your spirit the most.
Yeah. You have to like basically live in two realities, right? The reality that things aren't okay right now and there's um issues to be resolved, but know that they can be resolved, that you have the
Exactly.
power to resolve them. And it's that consistent action that's going to create your evidence of success
And
for
just allow
you.
yourself. Yeah, allow yourself to be with those feelings, because you will not stagnate and stay in those feelings if you just allow them through a way out.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it is to just really allow yourself to release, validate those feelings, feel them, but don't live them, because
Yeah.
that's when emotions stagnate. And that emotional stagnation, believe it or not, I mean, emotions can take so much energy. They're not, especially the harder ones, they're not energy efficient. they will burn out your energy. And as you know, like egg cells have the most mitochondria. They need a lot of energy. You need a
Hmm.
lot of energy in order to conceive. So one of the biggest ways we can be losing energy, even though we're eating all the right things, we're doing all the right things, is by allowing ourselves to stay. And I say stay, not be, because sometimes you can go through emotions and it moves through, but to stay and live in emotions that are just constantly draining your energy.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that realization that what I'm saying now is that the way you've shown up to your fertility journey is how you've lived your whole life. Right? You don't become this different person in a fertility journey. Your
It's true.
habits and your patterns like multiply,
Yeah,
right?
it's just who you are. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, and
And
it shows
so,
it too.
yeah, so most type A overachievers, I've always managed to do everything in my life, bring that same like energy into trying to conceive, and their fertility checklist, to-do list is literally blocking them from their ultimate goal because they're not actually um, being empowered in the information or the activities. They're like, okay, meditated, did my smoothie, took my
Yeah.
supplements, went to the
Hmm.
IVF clinic, check,
Right.
check, 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 check. And it's the equivalent, what I say to people when they ask me about acupuncture and yoga and reflexology. Okay, you go for that hour's appointment. It's magical. We all know that. Then you leave. How are you living? What's your
Yeah.
default energy? You go back into like hyperdrive mode? Oh, but that's okay. I did my acupuncture. Well, no, 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 no. That's like
Right.
1/100th of your week. And if
Hmm.
you're living the 99% in hyperdrive, that 1 hour is going to be just like supplementations, really expensive. Well, it won't be pee, but that's what I say about
Yeah.
supplements. It just becomes
Yeah.
really expensive
Yeah.
pee if you're not lowering that inflammation and not addressing, the core of it. So one of the modalities I've picked up now through my journey is Psych-K and getting to the core of releasing the emotion. So when you hear people talk about, um, letting it go, receiving it, what's your, best tip or advice of doing that? Because it is as easy as it sounds, but I
Hmm.
do think that there's this kind of unlearning process to be
Oh
able
yeah.
to get to letting go. So what's like kind of like your first steps to letting go, to doing it?
So yeah, it definitely is easier said than done in some ways, but it is actually easy, and that's why it's missed, because
Yes.
it's like super easy.
Yeah.
Because you know why it's easy? It's who you are. It's
Hmm.
how you have been designed. You have been designed to self-regulate, and your emotions are part of that design. And your mind and your body want that. Like your subconscious energy wants that. However, so when I was saying that's who you are, that's not who you are, that's who you've been. You can
Hmm.
actually change. You're malleable. There's neuroplasticity. You could literally shift your whole brain into whatever you want it to be. And so one of the biggest ways that I can say honestly, and I know because it's happened with me, like I've completely shifted so much of who I am, and I owe it to meditation.
Yeah.
So meditation being, and what it is you're training your mind basically to not be held hostage by your emotions and your thoughts. When you're sitting down and you're present in your awareness, which is not easy by the way, especially in the beginning, your brain, your ego mind will battle you in the
Hmm.
beginning and try to totally derail and convince you, as it does a lot of people, that you are not somebody who's made to meditate.
Yeah. Hmm.
And meditation is not for you, and that you do a different type of meditation, like walking or, when you're at the beach. I get it. That's a really great thing, but that is not meditation. And so when you when you create a discipline of meditation every single day. And I say, if you want to start with 5 minutes, that's fine. Because when you repeat a habit and also anchor it to another habit. So if it's like you have your tea 5 minutes later, like for 5 minutes after, meditate. for 5 minutes, because when you repeat a habit every single day, you will eventually, your mind will accept it as a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about repetition. So in the beginning, though, it's like cars on tires on a dirt road. And if you keep going in the same direction, it's going to be very hard for you to turn right
Mm-hmm.
because you have those tracks, and you create tracks in your mind and your behavior. So it's a matter of anchoring a new habit on an old habit. There's definitely tricks that you can do. So anchoring this new habit of meditation to something else that you do every single day. And if you don't have the 5 minutes, wake up 5 minutes earlier. Just set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier, and then start with that every single day. Or you could do it at night before you go to sleep. Some people say not to do. I personally love meditating before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's always worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
So focusing on your breath, becoming present, because the antidote to all of this stuff that basically controls us and keeps our mind hostage is that it always lives in anything but the present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The present moment is the antidote. So whatever it is that you can do to keep yourself present, and I prefer meditation. I mean, you could also do things like being outside in nature, going to the beach, whatever keeps you present, but that's active. But when you're meditating, you're turning yourself inward and you're accessing that intelligence that we're talking about, that intelligence that basically lives inside of you. And eventually it will download and regulate you.
Mm-hmm.
And not just your mind, but like it'll trickle down into your body.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for some people, I had a client who had never just sat with herself, right? So, like, meditation was like a no-go. And like the first step was like, don't pick up a book, don't listen to an audiobook, obviously don't scroll on your phone, don't watch TV, just sit. And she's like, what? And this is a
Yeah.
young girl. This is a girl in her 20s. And I
Mhm.
think that's a really big issue for we're in our 40s and sometimes it's hard, right? Like we're still retraining ourselves
I
too.
appreciate the compliment, but I just turned 50.
Oh, well, you're just into your 50s. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, we're still of an older generation that didn't grow up with technology, where now
Yeah.
we're seeing clients who did grow up with it and have literally never sat with themselves. Not
Yeah.
doing art, not doing writing, just sit and like look outside and ponder and wonder. And if you can't even do that, trying to get into a meditation routine, you're gonna feel like it's impossible. So like
Yeah.
I definitely think there's stepping stones of where you at and recognize that of yourself. Like,
Mhm.
don't beat yourself up if you can't do 5 minutes of meditation every day because you can't even go for a walk without your ear pods,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So
And
really
that's
recognizing
awareness.
that. Yes, and that's
That's
awareness.
yeah.
And then like I have clients who are like, okay, well, I always go on walks and I listen to my books. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But what does your mind do when it's not distracted? Because you're not able to recognize where you're at if you're always seeking this information. And trust me, I did it for a long time. So I
Me too.
like, I
I mean, I'm
know.
like, we've all been there. Like, do you think I just meditated or got into meditation for fun?
Yeah,
No,
right.
it was like, suffering is a very, very motivating factor to why a lot of us do this.
Yeah, and I think it's that like, well, I have all this information, so why am I not like achieving my ultimate goal, right? Or manifesting or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, because I'm not actually doing the work. And so if you
Mhm.
can recognize that and start the practices of, even just sitting, staring outside at a tree
Mhm.
for 10 minutes and watch what your mind does. Where does it
Yes.
take you? And then where it takes you is probably one core emotional block or belief system that is consuming that energy that is not allowing you to reach your ultimate goal. So it's really easy. And even like with Psych-K and all that, like, meditation gets you into a whole brain state. You get in that
Mhm.
alpha, you get in that theta, and there's ways to do that without getting super deep into meditation. But here's the caveat to it is that you have to have this deep belief in yourself that that's possible for you,
Oh
that it
yeah.
can be that easy for you. And sometimes when you don't even, believe that your body can heal, to take those extra leaps of like, oh, okay, I know I can just change my belief system like that, is like, that's not, no way. Like, if you told me this 10 years ago, I'd be like, absolutely not. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
have been able to receive that. So you got to honor where you are in your journey and know that whatever is being put in your heart, that's like your purpose, right? Whether it's to have your first kid, or I have clients that want their fourth kid,
Hmm.
right? And for whatever reason, they're struggling now and they feel this guilt or whatever it is. I'm like, something put that in your heart, whether
Yeah,
you
I
believe it's
agree.
God or universe, and
Yeah.
you have to act on that higher purpose. And so when you recognize that, that alone will keep you going in all the physical things and the energetic things, which are physical to us, right? Meditation still is a physical process. You got to, get yourself, and you'll keep continuing to do those things. And I think a lot of people stop right before the magic happens
Oh,
because
that is so good. Yeah. It's
because
true.
it's not instant results. I
Yeah.
understand. I used IVF. I understand why people go there, because it will give you an instant answer, whether that's a yes
It's
or a
not
no,
guarantee. Yeah.
right? You still
Yeah.
get an answer. It's tangible. Where when you're tapping into your true self and your authentic power and healing your body, it is uh like the waiting room, and it's just like painful at
Yeah,
times.
it is painful. It's very painful. And this is not to take away from that. I mean, it really is. But you know what I find, and I feel like I could write a book about this. I'm telling you, like the stuff that I'm hearing is incredible.
Mhm.
Literally, my patients just, I tell them, ask for a sign. What do you have to lose? And they ask for signs, and the signs are like insane. And so if you feel like you're at a loss for a belief and you're not sure, just ask for a sign and ask universe, whatever you want to call it, to guide you towards feeling that, if that's in your highest interest,
Mhm.
like in your highest good.
Yeah. It's that, getting into cruise control, surrendering. Yes, there is this stage where there's hard work to put in. Even just figuring out what you need to do in the first place, whether it is a gut health or adrenals or kidneys or,
Hmm.
thyroid work. There are things to figure out and find what you need to do. But when people say, well, how do I surrender? How do I get into that? And I was like, you'll be able to go into surrender mode when you are tapped into your empowerment and know you're on the right path. Then it's
Hmm.
easy for you. You know you're on the right diet. You know you have the right support team. You know
Hmm.
you're taking those steps to heal the energetics of whatever modality you're going. You know you're doing that. You have the feeling in your heart that it's possible and you can do it. And so it's easy to slip into trusting that the timing is not going to be yours. There's
It's a
obviously,
dance.
yeah.
It's a dance, right? And when you're dancing with another person, or, and every person's a universe, when you're dancing with another person, you are not going to guide the whole time. It's just,
Exactly.
it's impossible. So it's a dance. We have a dance with life. Like everything happens like that. And let me tell you, like, I always say it's like insert goal, but like we've done this with everything. We've done this like when we were younger and trying to meet the guy, and we had our heart set. That's the guy, whether he likes it or not, he's going to be my man, so you can
Hmm.
you can have that same like perspective on that. And then there's this, okay, if it works, it works. I'm just going to go with the flow. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Dream Guy comes along. It
Yeah.
just kind of works effortlessly.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just a place of trust. And it's
Yeah.
you're only going to find that trust within.
Hmm.
I definitely see um people pop into my world that are highly educated, know about the mix of functional medicine and the spiritual side of stuff, and they're still just grasping on to this ultimate goal, and they're just missing that one piece of surrender and trust in themselves and, their ultimate goal. What do you say when you get someone who is there? You can tell, right? Like you have this like talk with them, and I know as coach that's like the best thing we have going for us is we can see where they need to do. We're not going to be like start from point A with everyone because everyone's on their different journey. So when you are in that, just that you need to go to the weight room and wait, what's your best advice for people?
Meaning if they're in the state of like not trusting, is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
like they've got the diet, they're doing all the
Yeah.
things, but they're not in full empowerment. Like, okay, I've got this. I trust in my body and I trust in the universe. And it's a waiting game, right? Sometimes it's a healing waiting game. Sometimes it's your spirit baby telling you, I ain't coming down till,
Yeah.
Mercury's in retrograde, like whatever, like there's
Yeah.
things out of your control that you just have to
Mhm.
wait for. So what's
Yeah.
the best advice for when someone's like, "Yeah, I feel like I'm there, but I can't let go."
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, I can say, but if I actually work with a client and I see that, I always, I'll never like, I'll never challenge their reality.
Mhm.
Allow them to be in their reality, whatever that is, that's their truth. And to challenge it is really like to invalidate. So I never want to do that. And I want to say all roads lead to the light. So even if you're like in a road that feels really exhausting, that it's exhausting for a reason. It's exhausting because you're not on the path. It's going to give you signs that this is just not helping. And so let me, naturally you'll always go back and learn from it and grow from it.
Yeah.
So even the things that we think are like the worst thing, it's not a bad grade. It's where I've come from. It's what caused me to be on a spiritual path that I haven't before like this. And so all roads lead to light. Nothing you can do is wrong because it'll eventually teach you and guide you into alignment because emotions come as almost our compass.
Yeah.
They become very uncomfortable, just like our symptoms. It's just an emotional symptom, but it's a symptom. It's a
Mhm.
symptom that you got to listen. Something's off. I need to like listen to my body, listen to my mind, listen to my spirit. And so the best thing to do is just awareness, and the awareness just by itself. You don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to like change or force anything, or just be with yourself. Like allow yourself to be aware and to be
Yeah.
present with
Mm.
yourself, even in the darkness. Just be
Mhm.
present with yourself. Holding that presence will eventually like allow your energy to work itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's honoring where you're at, and maybe you don't feel like you can let go and trust because there is that like lesson or observation that you need to make about yourself, and tapping into that, and whether you feel it in your body or wherever it is, ask it. Sometimes I say like, well, really get into it. Is it an emotion that needs a little bit support and a little bit more digging, or is it just this pattern that you're on repeat
Right.
and you need to politely say to yourself, we don't live there anymore.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Or just, yeah, being aware, like, oh wait, is this really helping me? And the identification that will keep you there. Like,
mhm,
so identifying as a certain type of person, or I'm stressed out, or I'm this or I'm that, that's an identification. You get to choose exactly who you want to be. Like you have the power to do that.
yeah,
It might not be easy, to shift that like perception and to change that, but the awareness is your friend. So it's always coming back down to awareness.
yeah, exactly. What was the biggest aha moment when you were writing this book? Not only for the readers, but for yourself.
So it's interesting because I have, okay, so it's not really an aha because it's like more about me coming back to my own story, but I guess it was kind of like I was writing all of the information, like all the things that I knew to help and all the things that I learned, based on the medicine and just like life experience and wisdom and a lot of things that I've really been influenced with my grandmother. And then I forgot to share a very important detail, and then it's pretty much how I open the book. And basically, I am a product of secondary infertility, and my mom fought like really, really fought for me. And not only fought for me once she got pregnant with me, she got so unhealthy that the doctor almost suggested that she would abort.
Mm,
So she was like, no way. Like she fought for me. And so I am here to tell the story because I came from a woman who did not take no for an answer.
yeah. Yeah. And I would say pretty much 100% of people listening to this will have the same journey. You know,
Mhm.
we were talking about soul contracts and on a different podcast, and they asked me like, "Did you feel that that was your soul contract?" I was like, "Well, you don't fight as hard as I fought to have children if it's not part of, your DNA
Oh my
and
God,
what
I
you
just
were
got the
supposed to have."
chills. And
Right?
you know it's true when you get the chills because that is such an
Yeah.
involuntary response.
Yeah.
That just hit me. Oh my God. I
Yeah.
felt that in my bones.
And I really think that there is I want to say larger, I'm not going to say smaller anymore. I think there's a large majority of women who deal with fertility issues because it's their part of their journey to wake up, to
Yeah.
realize that our society has led us to believe that pregnancy isn't associated with health. It's easy. The 9 months doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. And we can just see that the epidemic that is our children's health here in America and other places like the UK and Australia and New Zealand, that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bunch of souls who are like, "Nah, get your shit together. I ain't coming down." Like, I need to have
Yeah.
an easier road because, as we both know, mentally, emotionally, and physically, when we aren't, not being perfect, but at least having the conscious awareness of what we do affects ourselves in every second, that it's a bit of a struggle to make it through your teens, to make it through your 20s, really have that identity, um not have health issues for one, but not also like to know how to follow your intuition and your empowerment and
Mhm.
actually
Yeah.
do the things you were meant to do here. So I definitely think that s- some of us women, and unfortunately, I think it's now down to 1 to 6 in America, which was 1 to 8 when I was going through this.
Yep.
Um, More are gonna struggle, and everyone's gonna have their different path. And even the people who don't quote unquote wake up, that's their path. And
Mhm.
eventually, I think people are gonna have to say, whether it's with their fertility or with a health issue or a child's health issue, they're gonna wake up to the reality that everything matters. It's a whole body system. And whether you're spiritual or religious or even atheist, you have to admit there is more going on than what
Mhm.
meets the eye.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even if you are just, everybody says, okay, science versus spirituality. Well, if you really look at science, they say in the beginning you'll be an atheist, but then afterwards you'll figure it'll bring you back to God. It'll prove God's existence because you see this incredible intelligence in the body and you're like, well, how does the body make this order? What causes it to be that way? There's got to
Mhm.
be something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let everyone know where they can connect with you and get your book and all that.
Thank you so much, Monica. So yes, I usually hang out on Instagram. That's like my favorite place to hang out. It's like my little cafe. And my handle is at the Wholesome Lotus Fertility. And the book is, if you could go to michelleoravitz.com, that's my website, michelleoravitz.com/ the Way of Fertility, which I'm going to give you the link for. And then I also have the Wholesome Fertility podcast.
Yeah, yeah. So, such amazing resources. It's always such an amazing time speaking with you. All those links are down in the show notes. And I hope that we don't leave it another really long time before we see each other. And thank you
Yes.
so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Monica.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Finding Fertility podcast. If you're loving this podcast, please leave us a rating and review and let us know how this podcast is supporting you to get steps closer to creating your dream family. I hope you have a beautiful weekend, and we will see you next Friday for another episode of the Finding Fertility podcast.